Okay, everybody, we're back. This is video 2 of the day. This is going to be Officer Barrow's testimony, and then we're going to get into Proctor direct. There was a lot with him, so I split his direct and his cross into 2 sections, so there will be another video where we cover the cross examination of Trooper Proctor. So, before we get into Piggy Proctor, we're gonna get into Barrows, who, he is recovering. He was in an accident with a drunk driver. I think he nearly died. So I'm sure that he takes what is being alleged in this case very seriously. And I have really no reason to doubt his testimony. He has no connection with Canton police or the people that live in Canton. So I really appreciated his testimony. So before we get started, I would like to ask that you give this a like, share it with all the appropriate hashtags, and if you're not subscribed, get subscribed. It's completely free, and it really helps me and the channel, and it helps to get us out there in the YouTube algorithm. I would really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. And now let's get into Officer Nicholas Barrows. So he is a sergeant with the Dighton Police Department. He has been there since 2011. He said it'll be 14 years in December, and he has been a sergeant for a year and a half. On January 29th of 2022, he was the officer in charge on the 8 a.m. to midnight shift. At the change of shift, he was informed that a resident had called 911 requesting a ride to the hospital in Brockton to meet his daughter because her boyfriend had died, and he needed a ride because of the snowstorm. At 2:30 p.m., he received a call from the Norfolk County DA's office, state troopers, and they said they were coming to retrieve a vehicle involved in a homicide from 345 Country Hill Drive. He realized that this was the same address from the 911 call from the prior shift. It was William and Janet Reed's house. At 2:32 p.m., he spoke to Proctor and told him about the 911 call from the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. The troopers asked him to meet at the residence, and they were calling as a courtesy because they were coming to his jurisdiction. At 3 o'clock, they told him they'd be there in 10 minutes. He called Diamond Towing, and the owner responded. He said that Country Hill Drive is located off of 138. He was traveling west on Country Hill Drive and saw a black truck parked facing east. They flagged him down, and it was Buchanan and Proctor. And they showed him their IDs and their badges. Now, if you remember in my last video, that is opposite of what Buchanan testified to. He parked at the end of the driveway. He couldn't get into the driveway because of the snow, and they walked up to the residence. There was a foot of untouched snow in the driveway. He stayed at the garage while the troopers went in to make contact with the homeowner. He observed a black Lexus SUV in the driveway. He said the troopers were let in through the garage. He went in briefly and then returned to the garage and stayed with the vehicle. He did not have any conversation with Karen Reed. He contacted the highway superintendent regarding how to retrieve the vehicle because the driveway was untouched with a foot of snow in it. So he asked the superintendent if he could plow the driveway so the truck could get the vehicle out. He says that he observed damage to the right rear taillight but it was not completely damaged. Quote, it was cracked. He said a piece was missing, but it was not completely damaged. He observed a dent on the rear quarter panel in the same area as the taillight that was damaged. He said that he was within 5 to 10 feet of the vehicle, and there was snow on the vehicle. The plow got there within 10 minutes, and it took 10 minutes to plow. The troopers were in the house for more than 30 minutes, but less than an hour. And he says that he didn't see anyone touching or manipulating the area near the taillight. And I have a little video clip of him testifying, so I'll play that for you now.
And at some point, did you make any observations of the right rear part of that Lexus SUV?
I did.
And what, if anything, did you observe about that area of the vehicle?
I saw that there was some damage to the right rear taillight. To my best ability and recollection, that taillight was not completely damaged. It was cracked, and a piece was missing, but not completely damaged.
And then beyond the taillight area of that vehicle, what, if anything else, did you observe as far as damage to the rear passenger side area?
Like a dent on the rear quarter.
And as far as the dent on the rear quarter panel that you saw, was that above the taillight, below the taillight, or something?
It's probably right in conjunction with the taillight in that same area.
Okay, now before we get into Proctor, there is going to be foul language. I'm sure this video will probably get demonetized. Thank you, Proctor. But I think it's really important to remember that this is the guy that was responsible for like leading and coordinating this investigation into Karen Reed. And put yourself in her position, guilty or not. If she's being investigated, it's just not right. The things that he said and did, the way he acted, it's just despicable. Yeah, it really disturbed me. That it's no wonder they waited so long to call him. I had really started to think they were not even going to call him, but they kind of had to. I mean, other people were testifying to things that he will also testify to. But being that he was leading this investigation, we really needed to hear from him, unfortunately. So I feel like they were kind of backed into a corner. They didn't have any choice but to put this guy on the stand. And I think Lally was trying to get all the bad out of the way, but it just wasn't a good look for this guy, for their department, the Commonwealth. It was awful. So get ready. We're going to get into the direct examination of Trooper Michael Proctor. So he comes in and he says good morning to the jurors, which I always feel like that it just seems like a butt kissing kind of move. The Alberts did that too. But he said good morning to the jurors. He is with the Norfolk County DA's office homicide unit with the Massachusetts State Police. He has been with the Massachusetts State Police for 10 years, and he's been at the DA's homicide unit for 5 years. So they have an on-call system. He said that Sergeant Buchanan sets the on-call rotation at random, which again is different than what Buchanan explained it as, but I don't know that this part, I always say the devil's in the details, but this detail, I don't know how important it is, but he says that Buchanan sets it at random. And when you're on call from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. and any call that comes in is your call. So on January 29th of 2022, he received a call from Buchanan at 6:48 a.m. just right before he was done. Like, if the call had come at like 7:05, you know, it might have been somebody else handling this investigation, but it is what it is, and this is what we have. So, he received a call from Buchanan at 6:48 a.m. advising him that Canton PD had a male party found in a snowbank at a residence, and it was a possible medical situation. Sorry if you can hear the dogs. I don't know what they're doing right now. It's like 1,000,000 degrees outside, so they're in the house. He called Detective Lank to see what had transpired that morning. Lank advised him that the male party was transported to Good Sam with some injuries. He said that he called Lank because he knew that he was on scene. I don't know how he knew that, but he knew. I'll get a drink. My voice is giving out on me, guys. Okay. So he contacted the paramedic at the hospital, Anthony Flamati, who informed him that John O'Keefe had injuries to his right arm, eyes, and nose, and had a 10% chance for survival. I don't know how Flamati came up with that number, but he then called Buchanan and told him this was likely more than a medical situation. It was a blizzard, we know, right? And their work vehicles are Ford Fusions or Chevy Malibus. So he got authorization for them to use their personal vehicles with four-wheel drive. He met... Sorry. He met Buchanan at Canton PD, where they met with responding officers. They arrived at 10 a.m. They spoke with Sergeant Good. They had been informed that he was on scene, and Good ID'd Carrie Roberts, Jen McCabe, and Karen Reed as being at the scene. He said Jen McCabe was out earlier that night at Waterfall with some individuals in Canton, and she was the one who called 911 when they found John in the snow. Proctor says that prior to January 29th, he had never met any of them. Proctor and Buchanan went to the home of Matt and Jen McCabe, and they spoke to Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, and Brian Albert one-on-one. He was with Buchanan from 10 a.m. until after the debriefing at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., and they used Buchanan's truck all day. All interviews were conducted individually except for Chris and Julie Albert, who were interviewed together. At this point, my husband pointed out that he's referring to Chris and Julie and Jen and Matt by first names as opposed to Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed, suggesting familiarity with them. He's not using distancing language. He's not saying, you know, we interviewed Mr. and Mrs. McCabe and things like that. He's referring to them on a more familiar level by their first names. And my husband, like I said, he used to be a military police officer, and he's not really watching, but he kind of listens in, and he heard that and came in there and made that comment. So he said he better get recognized in this video. So he did. Okay. He did one interview by himself at the grand jury across the street with the Currans. He said that he had had difficulty locating them. So when they appeared at the grand jury, he interviewed them one-on-one by himself prior to their testimony. The Currans hadn't been responsive to his request for interview. If you remember, the Currans were friends of John and Karen. Prior to January 29th, he says he had never met Brian Albert. After leaving the McCabe's house, they went to Good Sam because they knew Karen Reed had been Section 12 and was being treated there. And they also wanted to view John O'Keefe. So Good Sam informed them that Karen Reed had been released several hours before their arrival. They got there at approximately 1 p.m. They viewed John O'Keefe in the ER. He had abrasions on his right arm, approximately 6 to 8, ranging from his forearm to his lower bicep. There were no injuries underneath his forearm. Both eyes were swollen, black and blue. He had a cut on his right nostril and a smaller cut around his left eye. There was blood on the back of his head, but Proctor was unable to tell if there was any significant trauma to the back of the head. He said that he saw the blood like on the pillow or on the bed. They saw a pile of clothes in the corner that had been cut off of John, one sneaker, blue jeans, boxer shorts, an orange t-shirt, and a two-tone gray light hooded sweatshirt. So here is the picture that they showed in court. That is Proctor that you see standing there. I've got an arrow to him. There's the clothes that are circled, and that's Proctor's portfolio sitting on the chair. He identified it. And as you can see, the socks that I was wondering about are on John's feet. Why they didn't collect the socks, I still don't know. But this was the scene in John's room. Proctor has seen 6 to 8 vehicle versus pedestrian cases, 3 to 4 since he's been with the unit. In prior investigations involving pedestrians and vehicles, he has observed one or both shoes remained at the point of impact. With only one shoe with John, there was a potential that he had been struck by a vehicle. All this based on a shoe. Buchnick and Tully are his supervisors. He told Tully about the one shoe at the hospital. CERT found the other shoe, and it matched the one from the hospital. He says he was aware of this, but at this point, CERT had not conducted their search. So, John's clothing was wet. He said it was pretty well saturated. The right sleeve had cuts and tears to it, and it had blood and vomit on it. He saw surveillance video from McCarthy's and Waterfall of John wearing the same clothes that they secured at the hospital. He told Tully about the one shoe at the hospital. CERT found the other shoe, and it matched the one from the hospital. He says he was aware of this, but at this point, CERT had not conducted their search. So per O'Hara's testimony, he is the one that leads the CERT team. All CERT members were on scene by 5:41 p.m. The search was complete by 6:15 p.m. After finding the sneaker and other pieces of taillight, they continued to move south, 5:41 to 6:15. This is at like 1 o'clock. So the search has not even happened yet. So I guess Proctor has psychic abilities. I'm not sure. Items of evidence are put in brown paper bags, hopefully not Stop and Shop bags, and documented with time, date, who secured the item, the address where it was discovered, and it is taken back to the evidence processing area at the office. From there, it goes to the permanent evidence room that has triple retention, a key card, and an access code. Only 3 members at the office have access to the room, 2 evidence officers, Trooper DeChico and Trooper Kakowski, and Tully. Buchnick and Proctor had no access to the room. They received John's phone at Canton PD after going to Good Sam. They left Good Sam and went to 345 Country Hill Drive in Dighton. Karen Reed told him on the phone that's where she was. So she's obviously not hiding out. On the way, he contacted Dighton PD because they needed to coordinate a plow truck and potentially a tow truck. There was a foot of snow. It was a dead-end cul-de-sac, so they need the street and driveway plowed. So this, I'm just throwing it in here because I kind of found it interesting. So they received John's phone at Canton PD after going to Good Sam, per his testimony. Per Carrie Roberts' testimony, she said that John's phone was under him and she saw grass under him. Everything else was covered with snow. John's phone was under his back on the right side near the middle. She picked up his phone and put it in her pocket, then gave it to a first responder when she was asked for it. But who did she give it to? Because none of the law enforcement that was there, or the EMTs, testified about getting John's phone. And then we have this letter. I can't really see it on here. Let me make it bigger for myself and maybe for you. And it says, it's to Detective Lieutenant Brian Tully from Trooper Nicholas Guarino. The subject is the cell phone extraction and forensic analysis of a cell phone belonging to John O'Keefe. It says on Saturday, January 29th, 2022, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office responded to an unattended death of John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. I'm pretty sure Buchanan testified they did not go that day. Through his investigation, it was found that O'Keefe was a victim of a motor vehicle homicide. While on scene, Trooper Proctor, sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this, secured O'Keefe's cell phone and brought it to the Norfolk DA's office for forensic analysis. And that's all a lie. It's all a lie. They did not go to 34 Fairview on January 29th. They didn't go for days. He couldn't have secured the phone on scene because he wasn't on scene to secure it. And he just said he secured it at the hospital. So none of this makes any sense whatsoever. This letter, the testimony, none of it adds up. None of it matches. So he says that Buchanan parked along the snowbank at Mr. Reed's house. Officer Barrows joined. He'd never met him before. Now, Buchanan made it sound like Barrows was there first. Barrows said they were there first. Proctor says Dighton PD arrived first. I believe Barrows, but again, is this a detail that matters? I don't know, but the devil is in the details, and I've got them, and I'm going to give them to you. So, he saw the broken taillight on the right side of the black Lexus when they were walking up the driveway to the house. He says the damage on the SUV right rear taillight had large pieces missing. Again, not what Barrows said that he saw. He says the snow was waist high. Mr. Reed opened the garage door and invited them inside. Karen Reed was sitting on the couch in a large living room area. Her parents, William and Janet, were present for the conversation, standing off to the side. The conversation lasted 30 to 40 minutes. When they came outside, the vehicle was being put on the truck. They seized her phone and told her they'd be writing a warrant to search it. Let's see. So this is just a little more of me highlighting contradictions. So, Buchanan parked along the snowbank at Mr. Reed's house. Officer Barrows joined. He says Dighton PD arrived first. But then if we go back and look at Barrows' testimony, which I have on here, but you can also rewind, he says that he was traveling west on Country Hill Drive, and saw a black truck parked facing east. They flagged him down. It was Buchanan and Proctor. They showed him their IDs and badges. So, who you gonna believe? Who you gonna believe? And then there's a picture of the car in the driveway. And a little more of the mismatched testimony. He said that he saw the broken taillight on the right side of the black Lexus when they were walking up the driveway to the house. He says the damage on the SUV right rear taillight had large pieces missing, which the picture from the Sally Port, when they've showed that to other witnesses, they're like, yeah, that's what it looked like. So that's why I put it up here, because that's basically what Proctor's insinuating here, right? Now, Barrows' testimony was he observed damage to the right rear taillight, not completely damaged. Quote, it was cracked. A piece was missing, but not completely damaged. He observed a dent on the rear quarter panel in the same area as the taillight that was damaged. And then I added in a picture of the SUV being loaded onto the flatbed tow truck. And you can see maybe there's a piece missing, but it's not very big. Now, I think if it was as damaged as it looks in the Sally Port, it would look completely different in that picture of it being loaded onto the tow truck. So, again, I'm more inclined to believe Barrows. But this trial is kind of turned into a choose-your-own-adventure book. You can just go with whoever, I guess. They asked Karen for contact information for people that John O'Keefe had been with at C.F. McCarthy's, in particular, Michael Camerano. They observed her entering her passcode on her phone to retrieve the information, so that confirmed to them it was her phone. Now, I mean, I can get on other people's phones if I, we used to have this big group of friends back when we were stationed in Illinois, and I think we all knew each other's passcode. I could have gotten into any of their phones, right? And my husband knows my passcode, so if he gets on my phone to get somebody's contact information, that doesn't confirm that that's his phone. It's my phone. He just happens to know the damn number, but whatever. It was her phone, but that's just a weird way to say it, that confirmed it for them. He says that he put the phone in airplane mode and gave the phone to the expert in their office, Trooper Nicholas Guarino, who tried to access data on the phone once the search warrant was obtained. He said that putting airplane mode on prevents access from a computer or tablet, so you can't go in from your computer and delete information off of your phone or from iCloud. They followed the tow truck from Dighton to Canton PD, where the SUV was secured in the Sally Port. He said they used Canton PD's Sally Port because it was a heated facility and the SUV was covered with snow and ice when it was towed. He says that he and Buchanan never touched any part of that vehicle. The tow truck driver pulled the SUV into the Sally Port. Maybe. He says he didn't, but they had a debriefing meeting in the conference room at the Canton PD with other troopers involved with the case. No Canton police officers were there because they had stepped back from the investigation. The case officer role is a facilitator who delegates tasks, coordinates interviews. He says that they are not the sole decision maker. He has supervisors to bounce ideas off of and get feedback from, and all investigations are a collaborative effort because they are a small office. The case officer is the record keeper of all reports and video that comes in. Okay. When it comes down to decision-making time, he says, it is a group effort. At the debrief, they discussed the taillight pieces and sneaker found by CERT. They talked about the interviews that had been conducted that day. Proctor and Buchanan shared all they had learned throughout the day, and the meeting lasted 30 minutes to 1 hour. Okay, let's see. So Proctor and Buchanan had clothes from the hospital. They had what was found by CERT at 34 Fairview, and they had John and Karen's cell phones, which they transported to the office in Canton. The 2 phones were given to Nicholas Guarino. The clothing was laid out on butcher paper to dry in the evidence intake area. The taillight pieces were bagged and set aside in the evidence processing area. He says they didn't have access to the permanent evidence locker area, so they secured the items in the temporary intake area in a secure area in the office. On February 1st, he went to the Canton PD Sallyport. Pursuant to the search warrant, they were processing Karen Reed's SUV. Maureen Hartnett, a chemist from the State Police Crime Lab, who we have her testimony from before. Trooper Zachary Clark from CSSS and Trooper Joe Paul from the accident reconstruction team were also there. I laugh because, oh, Trooper Paul. CSSS document the scene with photos and videos and dust for prints. They were called at different times in the case: at Good Samaritan, at the autopsy, February 1st, at the Canton PD Sallyport, and at subsequent searches at Fairview Road. A different trooper showed up each time. They have no control over who shows up. Between January 29th and February 1st, he had not been in the Sallyport. The only difference he observed was the snow and ice had melted from the SUV. The taillight was still broken with large pieces missing. No, it just magically fixed itself. Okay, so he said CSSS document the scene with photos and videos and dust for prints. They were called at different times in the case and at subsequent searches at Fairview Road. But if you remember, Yuri Buchanan testified that he didn't contact CSSS to come out to document where evidence was found because so much had already been collected and he didn't need them to come photograph more shards of glass and plastic. They just collected it and processed it. So again, we have a little conflict in the testimony. Maureen Hartnett had the taillight housing removed and took it to the crime lab herself. Proctor says he did not come into contact with the taillight. Lally shows the low-quality video from 9:12 a.m. to 9:24 a.m., and I have an image of that, and you can see just how awful this video quality is. I mean, it's hard to make out anything. Proctor has the taillight housing with him in court, and he takes it out and shows it. That is the middle picture. And then Lally shows pictures of the taillight from the Sallyport, and Proctor says that was the condition it was in on January 29th. On the morning of February 3rd, Buchanan, DeChico, and Proctor went to 34 Fairview with Trooper Evan Brent from CSSS to dig out snow and look for more evidence. He had never been to 34 Fairview regarding the investigation before. Yet that letter said that he was there on the 29th when the incident happened, and he was securing John's phone. But in the real world, he's never been there before February 3rd. He went on February 3rd, February 8th, February 11th, February 18th, and February 10th with Buchanan. He was never by himself. On February 18th, he was with DeChico, and on February 8th and February 11th, he doesn't remember who was there. On February 3rd, they found a black drinking straw consistent with the one from the drinking glass John walked out of the waterfall with. John's hat was buried deep under the snow, and they found further pieces of plastic. The reason they returned on so many dates was because temps were between 30 and 60 degrees, and they had had several days of heavy rain. As the snow melted, more evidence began to present itself. There's that quote that Buchanan likes to use. So the morning of February 3rd, Buchanan, DeChico, and Proctor went to 34 Fairview, and he says he had never been to 34 Fairview regarding the investigation before. And then I just had that highlighted portion of that letter saying on Saturday, January 29th, 2022, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office responded to an unattended death of John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. Through his investigation, it was found that John O'Keefe was a victim of a motor vehicle homicide. While on scene, Trooper Proctor secured O'Keefe's cell phone and brought it to the Norfolk DA's office for forensic analysis. That is all a lie, because he just said he had never been to 34 Fairview prior to the 3rd. And in Buchanan's testimony, he also says they didn't go to 34 Fairview for several days. Here's what they found. Again, we've got the drinking straw that Buchanan said was in the grass. I don't think it's in the grass, and it looks like it's laying on top of a track that was made by a tire. John's hat and the plastic. Look at the size of that. You mean to tell me that that morning they didn't find that when they were out there with their leaf blowers and they found the glass and they found the blood drops that they put in the solo cups? Or CERT didn't find these big pieces when they were finding little bitty pieces, but they couldn't find the big pieces? Come on. Come on. Also on February 3rd, he and Trooper Brent went to 1 Meadows Ave, John's house. It was the first time he had been there. He says they went to document that there was no damage to John's vehicle and to look at the garage doors. And the phrasing of that, and it may just be semantics, it may just be phrasing, but he went there to document there was no damage to John's vehicle. How did he know there wasn't any damage to the vehicle? During review of John's ring video on January 29th at 5:07 a.m., Karen Reed is pulling out of the garage, backing up towards John's vehicle, coming extremely close, if not hitting the vehicle. So they wanted to document that there was no damage to John's vehicle. Again, how did you know? How did you know? So that is a picture of John's Traverse. That is a picture of John's garage doors, and that is a close-up of the Traverse where they figure she either did or didn't hit his car. He says he first observed the Ring videos on John O'Keefe's phone through the Ring app. Now, isn't that interesting? Before he got the footage from Ring, he viewed videos on John's phone through the app. This makes him the only person that we know of that had access to those videos, because we know Karen didn't. So if anybody should be getting looked at for messing with the Ring videos, maybe they need to look at Proctor. So after he did that, he wrote a search warrant for Ring itself. The videos on the Ring app on John's phone match the videos that Ring produced. He says there is snow on John's vehicle and no snow comes off when Karen Reed hits it. He says there are no red taillight pieces in the driveway. He says there was no significant or any damage to the rear of John O'Keefe's vehicle, and there was no damage to the garage doors. Now, how the garage doors got involved, I don't know. On February 8th, 11th, and 18th, he returned to Fairview and recovered further evidence that had revealed itself: more pieces of red and clear plastic. On February 3rd, the items were located between the flagpole and fire hydrant from the front left area of the property. On February 8th, 11th, and 18th, items were located in the same general area in the grass. On February 8th, they found black, clear, and red plastic. On February 11th, they found glass fragments in clear and red plastic. On February 18th, they found several pieces of red and clear plastic. The first search warrant for John's Ring video was for the dates January 24th through 29th. The second search warrant was for January 30th through February 3rd or 4th. He was not able to obtain an activity log of who was using a device or what device to access the system. There was no record of who was logging in or day and time. There is no video of Karen arriving back at around 12:34 a.m., which I was like, that's oddly specific. How does he know that she was supposed to be there at 12:34? There's a gap between 11:35 p.m. on January 28th and 5:07 a.m. on January 29th. Now, if you remember, 11:35 is when Michael Camorano went to pick up his daughter. And then there's a gap until we see Karen backing out at 5:07. So, like I said, there's no video of her coming home at all. There is no video of Carrie Roberts, Jen McCabe, and Karen looking at the taillight. He inquired several times with Ring regarding if video is deleted, is there a record? On January 16th, 2024, at the DA's office, Trooper Gallerani took his and Buchanan's DNA voluntarily for comparison. He says it was a swab under the tongue, which I've never heard of. Buchanan and later Gallerani will tell you that it was cheek swabs, but he said it was under his tongue, so whatever. The swabs were taken into possession of Gallerani. He knew Julie, Chris, and Colin Albert before he interviewed them. Now, I've got one of my fun graphics here for you. His sister is friends with Julie's sister, Jillian. And Julie babysat his niece and nephew, his sister Courtney's kids. They've also spent time at his parents' house. So you've got Jillian Daniels and Julie Albert, who are sisters. Jillian is best friends with Proctor's sister, Courtney, and friends with Julie Albert. Julie babysat Courtney's kids, who are Proctor's niece and nephew. So you got all that? Give you a second just to kind of look at it. All right. He says that he grew up in Canton and went to Canton High School, which really makes me wonder about how he didn't know the Alberts. But let's see. Julie and Chris Albert are 10 years older than him. His sister Courtney is 2 years older than him. He says that they are best friends and they talk 5 or 6 times a day. He said they use FaceTime, they text each other, phone calls, everything. He interviewed Julie and Chris at their home in early to mid-February with Buchanan. He says he had never been to their home prior to that. He says Julie, Chris, and Colin Albert are loose acquaintances. He's seen them maybe 6 times over 10 years at family functions. He explained the relationship with his sister and the Albert family to Buchanan, Fanning, and Tully. He said the Alberts are his sister's friends. He's been to functions with them, but his only connection is through his sister. That relationship had 0 impact on this investigation, or so he says. Okay, so a little more of the, let's clear this up. So he says he grew up in Canton and went to Canton High School. Julie and Chris Albert are 10 years older than him. Now, per Chris Albert's testimony, he said he has known Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator on this case, for 15 years. And he knew Trooper Proctor's sister, Courtney. Colin Albert's testimony said he was shown a picture from 10 years ago. He was the ring bearer in Courtney Proctor's wedding. Trooper Proctor is also in the photo, far left. You can see the photo down here. He's known Trooper Proctor since he was a little kid. Knows where he lives. The Proctor family is close to the Albert family. So, maybe more than loose acquaintances here? Maybe? Oh, buckle up. Here we go. Lally shows Proctor a text message thread from his personal phone between him and some close friends from, as Proctor describes them, junior high, even first grade. Some live in the area, and some live as far away as Tennessee. The text thread covers the time period of October 18th of 2021 at 8:48 a.m. through August 31st, 2022 at 11:19 p.m. There are 38,707 messages in that time frame. On January 29th of 2022 at 6:30 p.m., his friend from Tennessee texts, "I need to brandish a gun more often." Proctor says his friend just moved to Tennessee and he was making a joke about the lifestyle there, that guns are more prevalent and more common to be carried around there. And then here are some of his texts. This is the group text with his friends. It says, Chip, name of that BP cop. Chip is Proctor's nickname. 10:53, Proctor says John O'Keefe. And then somebody in the group says, how old? Proctor says he took custody of his sister's kids. Somebody responds, oh man, that's rough. Proctor says mid-40s. And then somebody sends a link to John O'Keefe's Facebook. Somebody says, what's that? Don't have the book anymore. Proctor says, this one is a nightmare. Think about the kids. That's awful. And then his friend, whose nickname is Bird, says, I'm sure the owner of the house will receive some shit. Proctor responds back, nope. Homeowner is a Boston cop too. And then Bird says, I hope not, but I can see it. Now you see the black box there? Lally picks and chooses which text he's going to read, and he does this with everybody. But this is what we're getting on direct. We get more when we get into cross. Okay, so this is 16 hours into the investigation. Keep that in mind. 16 hours they've been investigating. Oh, and just so you know, Bear is another nickname for Proctor. So he's Chip and he's Bear. Proctor says she waffled him. I looked at his body at the hospital. He was banged up. Somebody says, I thought he was drunk. Did he get beat up? Proctor says, nope. So the owner of the house was a woman cop that beat him. That was from Bird. Proctor says, that's what I initially thought after talking to the Canton paramedics. Proctor says, then I saw the guy. And then somebody sends a text that says, Bear, let's focus. What does she waffled him mean? What's the story? Proctor says she hit him with her car. Somebody says, oh, Jesus. Bird says, okay, that's fucked up. And Proctor says, intentional or not? So 16 hours in, he already knows that Karen Reed did this. Still 16 hours in, still texting with his friends. Somebody says, gotcha. He was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him. Proctor says, that's another animal we won't be able to prove. Then Proctor says they arrived at the house together, got into an argument, she was driving, and left. Somebody says, what's the name of the Canton cop living in Canton, the one involved? He says, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. That's from Proctor. Now, he says this meant that throughout the day, there had been compelling evidence that Karen had struck John with her vehicle. Now, what compelling evidence do you have? You have her car with a broken taillight, okay. You've got John's body without any real evidence of being hit by a car. You've interviewed the McCabe's and Brian Albert and Karen. What compelling evidence do you have? Exactly. But let's continue. Like I said, he says, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Somebody texts, gotta be. And then somebody texts, I can only imagine what internal affairs at the BPD are trying to get out there. So, same text thread, 16 hours into the investigation. One of his friends says, she hot at least? Proctor says, from all accounts, he didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job. See you next Tuesday. Now, Proctor explains that the he that didn't do anything wrong is referring to Brian Albert. It sounds to me like he's talking about John O'Keefe, but whatever. So when he's reading this out loud, he spells C-U-N-T, and Bev says, don't spell it, these are your words, and she makes him say it. And then we hear this, I don't know, 1,000 times. He says, the rest of the unprofessional and regrettable comments are something he's not proud of, and he shouldn't have wrote it in private or any other setting. Wow, you think?
These are your words, Trooper Proctor?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead and say them.
She's a whack job cunt. C-U-N-T. She hot at least? Yes, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass. Is that chick a smoke? If you like women who shit themselves, not bag, as Chief would say. She's got a leaky balloon knot. Leaks poo. She responded, nothing. I just saw Julie, and she said when this is all over, she wants to get you a thank you gift. And I respond, get Elizabeth one. Elizabeth's my wife. I text my wife, waiting to lock this whack job up. She was a whack job. She's gross. Oh, fuck her, bitch. Trooper Chris Moore, Trooper Jeff Kukowski, Lieutenant John Fanning, Trooper Dave DeChico, and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan. Going through his retarded client's phone right now.
I'm going through his retarded client's phone right now. Who's the retarded client? Who was it you were referring to as retarded?
Miss Reed.
Karen Reed, the woman sitting to my left.
Yes, sir.
Subject of your investigation as a professional, correct?
Yes, sir.
As an unbiased, objective investigator, the person that you were investigating, you referred to your bosses as retarded.
I hate that man. I truly hate that man.
I hate that man. I truly hate him. Correct? That's a visceral response to someone who's just doing a job. Were you upset or annoyed or pissed off that Karen Reed had gotten representation, legal representation, to represent her? How do you feel about it now? He's sitting right there.
I still don't care for him, no.
I'll let it stand.
So that kind of gives you a little glimpse into Cross as well. But yeah, he's a prize. He is a prize. All right, so we said she had, at least from all accounts, he didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job. See you next Tuesday. And then he says she's a babe with a weird Fall River accent. No ass. Okay. Still texting with his school friends. Proctor sends a photo of Karen being escorted from the state police Milton Barracks, which I don't know if this is the exact photo, but this is a photo similar to what he sent. One of his friends says, "Is that chick a smoke?" Proctor says, nutbag, as Chief would say. She's got a leaky balloon knot. It leaks who? What are we, 12? He says he's referring to Karen Reed's medical conditions, and these are unprofessional comments that he should not have made and he's not proud of. My question is, how does he know about her medical conditions? My guess, Jen McCabe told him. Because he's only talked to Jen, Matt, and Brian. Jen is the one that would know. I'm sure it didn't come up in their interview with her at her parents' house. So how does he know? Jen McCabe, the epicenter of bullshit. Go back and watch that video if you want to know what I'm talking about. So he says that these juvenile, unprofessional comments have zero impact on the facts and the evidence and the integrity of this investigation. He had communication with the members of the Canton PD. 1, to coordinate times for interviews with firefighters and police officers and to set up a conference room where interviews could be conducted. And 2, to inquire about any relevant security cameras in the area. He's shown text messages between him and his sister Courtney from December 10th of 2021 at 9:33 p.m. through August 30th of 2022 at 8:48 p.m. There are 2,865 messages in that time frame. On January 29th of 2022, he texts Courtney and says, "At work, what's up?" She's like, "What? Why?" Proctor says, "Oh, just found a frozen to death on the front lawn in Canton this morning. Actually, just interviewed Jen McCabe, and she said she knows you." Courtney says, "Cut the shit." Proctor says, "You." Courtney responds, "Yeah, she knows Jack," that's her son, "very well, and she's really good friends with Julie. Her sister is married to Brian Albert. You still working?" Proctor says, "Yep, gonna be out for a while on a homicide." Courtney says, "The Canton thing is a homicide?" He says, "Don't say a word to anyone." And she says, "Of course not." He says, "At the very least, it's suspicious." And then she goes on to say, "This is your livelihood. I would never mess with that." Okay. And then we get a text from Proctor, and it says, "Julie and Chris were at the bar with the victim and his girlfriend. Got to interview them." And then February 1st, 2022 at 5:57 p.m., Proctor sends, "What's up?" Courtney responds, "Nothing. I just saw Julie and she said that when this is all over, she wants to get you a thank you gift." Proctor says, "Get Elizabeth one." That's his wife, Elizabeth. Courtney says, "Because I guess her and Chris were friends with John and she's so proud of you for leading this." And then she says, "Elizabeth?" He says, "She's been stuck with the kids for the last 10 nights. And Courtney says, "Yeah, but she knew what life was like married to a cop." Now, Proctor tries to clarify and says he never received or asked for a gift, nor did his wife. Proctor says, we write like 8 to 10 warrants on each case. I don't know why it's not showing what Courtney responded, but she said, though I have no idea what the hell you do or how it works. Then he's shown private messages between him and his wife Elizabeth from May 20th, 2022 at 6:19 p.m. through August 31st of 2022 at 9:16 p.m. There are 1,632 messages in that time frame. This is in regard to the arrest of Karen Reed after being indicted by the grand jury. On June 9th of 2022 at 4:56 p.m., Proctor texts Elizabeth, his wife, and says, we're going to lock this whack job up. He says, again, unprofessional messages I should not have sent. I don't have an explanation other than they're regrettable and something I'm not proud of, the language I used. The comments he used among his friends in the group text were made 16 to 18 hours later. He had conducted, as he says, multiple interviews. He knew John O'Keefe never went into 34 Fairview. How do you know? You haven't even been to Fairview to look. And he knew there was one shoe at the scene and one at the hospital. So basically, what he's saying is, he's taking Jen, Matt, and Brian's word for it that John never came in the house. Based on John's injuries, Karen Reed's statements during her interview with him in Buchanan, her broken taillight, and the taillight pieces found at the scene, there was compelling evidence pointing directly at Karen Reed that she struck John with her vehicle, and that let him make those comments. He says they weren't professional comments, but based on the day's investigation, it was clear that Karen Reed had struck John O'Keefe with her vehicle. I don't see how it was so clear, but okay. He's shown texts between him and Trooper David DeChico, the evidence officer. They're in the same unit, they're buddies, they golf together, they hang out outside of work, their kids play together, they're friends. The texts are from March 17th of 2022 at 11:08 a.m. through August 18th, 2022 at 6:08 a.m. There are 87 texts in this time frame. And this is how it goes. So on April 28th of 2022 at 10:52 a.m., Proctor texts DeChico and says, without a doubt, he's got diarrhea of the mouth too. Don't know who they're talking about there. And then DeChico says, rookie move not meeting with the ME and getting that homicide determination. Proctor responds, Yuri and I had 2 conference calls with her, had numerous photos, etc. We laid out the entire case for her. And then DeChico says, not good enough. Should have had me or Jeff do it. Proctor says, if you 2 did it, she would have made it accidental or natural causes. Of course it's undetermined. She was a whack job. David DeChico says, dear God, what the fuck, what the hell is inconclusive about the whole thing? So just little explanations off to the side. ME is the medical examiner who did John O'Keefe's autopsy. The conference call, the doctor had questions as to the facts and evidence about what transpired. So they had conference calls just to provide her with the information that they had found in their investigation. Another trooper attended the autopsy, not Buchanan or Proctor. And undetermined was the manner of death from the medical examiner. Now also, he says, when he says, of course it was undetermined, she was a whack job, he says he's referring to Karen Reed. But it sounds like he's calling the female medical examiner a a whack job. He has shown text between him, Trooper DeChico, Trooper Kakowski from May 24th of 2022 at 9:21 p.m. through August 24th, 2022 at 4:56 p.m. There are 494 messages in that time frame. Trooper Kakowski at 9:21 p.m. on May 24th of 2022 sends a picture of a toy Santa Claus. Proctor responds, 11:19 p.m. on June 9th, 2022, if you like women who shit their pants. He says this is another regrettable comment regarding Karen's medical condition. The statement she made tonight at H7 was mental. Christ, it was on BWC. BWC equals body-worn camera. Trooper Kakowski says, that's her, smoke. What did she say? Proctor responds and said the Alberts beat the shit out of O'Keefe, left him for dead. That's why her taillight was cracked. She's gross. DeChico says, oh, fuck her, bitch. June 9th, 2022, Karen Reed was being processed at Milton Barracks. He is shown text between him and troopers from his office. Trooper Chris Moore, Trooper Jeff Kakowski, Trooper John Fanning, Trooper David DeChico, and Sergeant Yuri Buchanek. Two of those are supervisors of his. Buchanek and Fanning are his supervisors. These are from May 26, 2022 at 8:19 p.m. through August 26, 2022 at 5:36 p.m. There were 651 messages in this time frame. Okay. David DeChico at 9:42 p.m. on 8/17/2022 sends a picture of David Yannetti, which this is the picture. And how Proctor explained it, he said it was a picture of Yannetti and it was from quite some time ago. Proctor responds, says, funny, I'm going through his retarded client's phone. No nudes so far. I hate that man. I truly hate him. After obtaining a search warrant for Karen Reed's phone, they weren't able to extract any data from it until August of 2022. Troopers in his office knew that he was going through the phone that evening. He was interested in locating location data, text messages, and Google searches. That no nudes yet was the update he gave troopers from his office. He says it was a distasteful joke. He wasn't able to go through her phone thoroughly because he came across a text between Karen and her attorney, so he had to stop going through the phone, and he made his supervisor aware of those communications. Trooper Garino hooked up the phone to a device called Gray Key that tries every possible passcode to access data on the phone. They didn't have the passcode when they retrieved the phone. I feel like he probably sat there and he watched her enter her passcode, remember? Because that's how they confirmed it was her phone. I bet he had it. Only my opinion. Between January 29th and August, they hadn't been able to see anything on the phone. August 22nd was the first time they were able to have access to the phone. He was looking for more evidence contained within the phone, not nudes. After coming across communication with her attorney from January 29th, the phone had to be sent off to a taint team, what a great name, to remove any attorney-client privileged information from the phone. Then it was returned. A copy was given to the defense. It was a long turnaround time. They didn't get the phone back until spring or summer of 2023. All right, so that was it for his direct examination. Let's see. Show you. So this is a news clip from Boston of the reaction of the jury to the text. It's a little hard to hear. I apologize. So for this video, you may want to turn up the volume a little bit.
One woman had her mouth open. One woman had her hand over her mouth and was watching. One woman who doesn't often look at the witnesses leaned in and looked at him like this. One woman looked back and looked at every single female juror she could look at to make eye contact with. Now, I'm leaving the men out because I wasn't necessarily paying attention to them, because suddenly the coalition of women on the jury were reacting to this language, to these words, and I at one point they were just shaking their head. One woman laughed that this was just, I have to guess, an outrageous laugh reaction.
All right, hopefully you could hear that. What else have I got here for you? Here he is explaining his rookie move text message.
Trooper Chico, rookie move, not going into a meeting with the ME and getting that homicide determination. I respond, Yuri and I had 2 conference calls with her, sent her numerous photos, etc. We laid out the entire case for her. Trooper Chico responds, not good enough, should have had me or Jeff do it. I respond, if you two did it, she would have made it accidental or natural causes.
All right, and this is the video from the driveway at Karen Reed's parents' house.
Examining witnesses, their eyes are on the witnesses 99% of the time. However, on cross, there are those moments like you see when you're watching the stream. The defense attorneys at times can have a lot more pizzazz when they're asking questions. They make jokes even sometimes, and you see the jurors' reactions to that at times. Maybe a chuckle or something here or there. I don't think I can say whether or not they like Lally. That's not.
And this one I thought was interesting. It's from Microdots. I've got one of their shirts on right now. Shout out to Microdots. They have been doing amazing things during this trial. This video is regarding the taillight, and I think it's important that we look at this and have all the information that we can possibly have to make up our minds.
Why did Karen Reed's left side tail light appear damaged in the flipped video presented by the Commonwealth? We have no record of anything ever happening to that side of the SUV. Yet, somehow the damage in the flipped video seems to closely resemble the damage presented in the police photographs taken later. We needed to find out if any white light radiates from an undamaged Lexus LX570 under any condition. The taillights from 2016 through 2021 models are identical.
No white light. White light gonna be only if you put it in reverse. Can you put it in reverse and not move it? So that's in reverse. No white light. Is there any other way it would change? No?
What we're seeing here makes no sense. None of that white light can be explained without damage. This is the SUV as seen by the jury weeks ago. The left side is pristine. A portion of the white light just flickered off. There is no function of the lighting system that accounts for that to happen either. Watch closely here. as the white dot tracks with the movement of the officer as he moves in front of it. You're invited to draw your own conclusions.
Alright. I thought it was interesting, especially seeing one on a vehicle that's not damaged, that's in working order, and then to go back and know what you saw when it was working and look at the video. It's, yeah. There were a couple of newspaper items in the Boston area. This one, male chauvinist welcome at MSP. What a ringing endorsement they've been during this trial. And this one says, Trooper's testimony hits new low in regards to Proctor's testimony. And I think we can all agree with that. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to all the subscribers that have been here all along. Apparently, according to YouTube, it is my channel's birthday today. So, happy birthday, channel. If you're not subscribed, get subscribed. I would really appreciate it. We'd love to have you here to discuss this and all the other cases that we're going to follow if this one ever wraps up. Give this a thumbs up, please, and pop off in the comments with what you think of Proctor's behavior. Now, granted, it was his personal phone, but to be talking about somebody in that way and to have made up your mind 16 hours in who did it, how they did it, and what was going to happen, that's scary. That's scary to think about, that it could all come together that fast and then magically all the evidence seems to fit. I don't know. Like I said, pop off and let me know what you think, and let me know what you're thinking about this jury. Why do you think we're still waiting after what they've been deliberating for 4 days? And I'll be back at it tomorrow. Alright, so my next video will be Proctor's cross-examination by Alan Jackson, which was very interesting, and then we will go from there. He is probably one of the last that is like going to be really time-consuming videos. That's why I broke it in two. There's one other that might be a little lengthy, but I should be able to combine quite a few people's testimonies into one video, because a lot of people, while they had a lot of good information to add, it didn't take very long. So I will keep working on these presentations and get them out to you as soon as I can. Until next time, everybody have a great evening. Bye.